Good evening and welcome. My name is Jennifer Sackman, and I am the chair of the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures. And on behalf of my department and our sponsors, I would like to welcome you all to tonight's screening of Embrace of the Serpent. It's the third film in our virtual festival celebrating Ibero-American cinema. Our festival will continue with a new film every Thursday for the next 3 weeks. After the initial screening, the films will be available to stream for 1 week on our portal for the St. Mary's community. I want to thank our sponsors. This festival has been made possible through the generosity of the Spanish Film Club Pragda Grant, as well as the co-sponsorship of the following departments and offices at St. Mary's College: English, Gender and Women's Studies, Global Studies, History, the Office of Inclusion and Equity, the Office of Multicultural and International Student Services, the Student Diversity Board, and the Center for Women's Intercultural Leadership. I'm going to, in a moment, introduce my colleague, Associate Professor of Spanish, Ty West, and he will be introducing tonight's film. But before I do that, just a couple of housekeeping questions. If you have a slow connection, you might want to move to a wired connection with an Ethernet cable. You may also watch the film streaming and come and join us at the end of the event for Q&A. And I will drop the link to the streaming so you could stream it on your own with the username and password for our film festival into the chat as soon as Professor West begins his introduction. After the film is over, please do stick around and go ahead and we'll begin a discussion about the film. And so with that, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Professor Ty West of Spanish, who will give us an introduction to the film.
Good evening. Welcome to movie night. So tonight we'll watch Embrace the Serpent. This is a film directed by the Colombian director Ciro Guerra, who's also directed the wonderful films The Wind Journeys and Birds of Passage. These are films that together capture amazing multiple perspectives on Colombian culture. So Embrace the Serpent debuted at the Cannes Film Festival in 2015 and was screened at the prestigious Sundance Film Festival and the Rivera Film Festival. It has won multiple awards, including the Platino Award for Best Ibero-American Film, and it was nominated for Best Film, the Best Foreign Language Film at the 88th Academy Awards. This is the only Colombian film to receive that honor. This is a film that gives us all something to think about. It's about journeys and encounters. It's about science. It's about ethnography, botany, and the limits of all those things. It's about illness and the allure of a fictional cure. It's about the desire for knowledge and its impediments. It's about religion and madness and reality and hallucinations and colonization and survival. This is a film that's shot almost entirely in black and white. Let's see if you can pay close enough attention to find the one scene in color. And it really gives us breathtaking views of landscapes, what the director called an imagined Amazon. And it also gives us direct access to the linguistic multiplicity that emerged from the multiple colonial encounters. So try to enjoy both those aspects of the film. Please feel free to put questions and comments in the chat throughout, and at the end we'll have a discussion. Enjoy the movie.
Okay, so it's always weird to transition from the film to the Q&A, especially in the Zoom. So if anyone wants to just go ahead, or Ty, if you want to start, if you have anything you want to lead the discussion, or we can wait for a question to pop up in the chat. I'll just take a minute to remind everyone that we are back here next week with Spider Girls, and I'm going to drop the link to that registration in the chat for anyone who wants to register for that. Questions, comments, thoughts, observations? Any of my students from 320 that are here, we talked about a lot. Well, we talked about some cinematographic techniques today. Maybe anything about sound or about plano secuencia or anything like that. If you have any commentaries, observations.
You don't want to share your experience drinking La Cruña?
Me?
It's a joke.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I don't have any experience with that. I'll just pose a question. Oh, okay. So there's a question. What was going on that at some point everyone was afraid of Colombians? Has to do you want to take that, Ty?
It's, I mean, they're on the border there, so there's a war happening.
Mhm.
And if you remember, the botanist says, right, he's speaking about the importance of rubber.
Mhm.
He says there's a war happening and our people want rubber. So it maybe some type of, I'm not exactly sure if it's a concrete historical reference or if it just underlines the struggle over resources in that region at that time.
The end of the film said it was based on real journals. Did the part with the botanist from Boston really happen, or was that made up for the film? I don't know that we know. Do we know the answer to that?
Yeah, the ethnographer and the botanist were real people. And the movie is based loosely on their travel account. Yeah.
So I was thinking that the resource had to do with the scene about the Colombians had to do with the idea that they were stealing, well, not stealing, but taking over parts of the Amazon that belonged to indigenous peoples, and that's why they were afraid of them. And that maybe is what you meant when you were talking about resources.
I was talking about rubber, but also,
Yeah.
if you know, the indigenous groups refer to, they don't consider themselves Colombian when
Right.
they're like living within the Colombian national territory, but they call Colombians Colombian. They don't consider them, they don't include themselves in that category.
Right. So that's what I meant. The Colombians stealing from the indigenous people their land, yeah, or the resources of the Amazon. Other comments? It was interesting to me, and I don't know enough about the film, I can't answer this question, but is it, and it must be documented somewhere maybe by the filmmakers, obviously, which tribes they were working with and how many and which indigenous languages were spoken. And it was interesting to me that the ethnographer and the botanist spoke some of the indigenous languages, enough to communicate with some people, but not all.
Yeah. I believe I read that there were 9 languages in the film. There's obviously Portuguese as well, and German.
Right, right. Is that a documented historical issue of the guy who proclaimed himself a Messiah?
I'm not sure how much of, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Interesting part of the movie, though.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anybody want to pose any other questions or things to discuss? The symbolism of the jaguar, the serpent, any?
Memory and forgetting.
Mm-hmm. Remembering. I really enjoyed where he says that he the man says, I tried to kill you, I don't deserve that. And he said, but maybe I tried to kill you. And sort of the like cyclical nature of time and referencing his own experience of the past that he's trying to remember. Just different ways of perceiving time. I thought that was interesting.
There's a lot about identity too.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with the same person over many years who feels that he's lost. In the beginning, he'd lost his people. And then in the end, he feels like he'd lost his knowledge. He'd forgotten the way to prepare different plants and things. And the photos, obviously, the technology that the Westerners bring in, and the photos allowing someone's image to travel to different lands and be viewed by other people in your absence. And he had a specific word for that.
Richard said it's remarkable task to find the right indigenous actors. Were they necessarily actors, or were they actual, I think they were, maybe it was their acting debut, as it were.
It makes sense that Richard would ask that question.
It does.
But I don't know the answer to that either. I don't know who all the actors were.
Hey, Fiona. Fiona says, I thought it was interesting how they use the different times to show the change and different perspectives. Was the jaguar and the serpent supposed to represent how the jungle killed the German, as in the serpent?
So I think this movie is frustrating at times because you want to find answers, but I think so it's the journey of two different Western people traveling into these areas, and it kind of puts us in those situations where we're also seeing things and trying to understand and hearing languages we don't completely understand. And right, we want to know. This movie is really a lot about the quest for knowledge, the desire for knowledge, wanting to know and to acquire. They want to load up their canoes with stuff and take it back so they can show it off. And but it's hard at times to come up with answers. So maybe think about it in that way, the experience of being thrown off course and trying to make sense of the world. We don't have that as much in our everyday lives. Sometimes something happens we can't figure out, but mostly we're okay. But in those situations, everything becomes an adventure, and you have to try to attempt to figure it out. So I don't know the answer to the symbolism between the serpents and the jaguar.
So Professora Valencia is commenting, and it kind of relates back to what you were saying about the question of wonder or maravilla, and the idea of things that are not translatable either through language or absorbing the totality of an experience. So the inability to completely explain or comprehend or find the answer, especially for Westerners, maybe in that ambiente, in that environment. Sort of the point of what you were saying, right? The sort of embracing the ambiguity of not understanding.
Well, I saw Professor Valencia mentions some of the chronicles of the conquest where like Columbus claims to hear indigenous languages and understand what they mean. They're making gestures, and he's saying, oh, right? Gold is that way. They're saying they'll lead us to the treasure, basically. So, right, the ethnographer recognizes the ambiguity that he can't decipher. And that's a direct contrast to other types of explorers and people that arrive at the Americas for stuff.
Any other comments, questions, topics for discussion? I'm happy to see majors and minors, students and alums alike. Okay, well, we're glad that you joined us, and thank you to Professor West for giving us the introduction, and thank you to everyone who, the one scene in color. Yeah, did anyone want to comment on that? You have thoughts, Professor West?
I mean, it's when he's under the influence.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot about tapping into the dream world and accessing different types of information as well. So, I mean, the idea that it's our notion of what it means to take some type of hallucinogen is different. And it shows us different ways to think about that as well.
Okay, well, again, thanks to everyone for joining us. We'll be here again next week at the same time with Professor Valencia, right? You and I for Niñas Araña, the spider thieves. So next week, Thursday, 6:30. Mackenzie says thank you to you. And as always, thanks to our sponsors, and thank you to Richard Baxter and Special Events for making it possible for us to be here with you tonight via Zoom. So, right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.